Welcome back to Our State of Education here on 760 WJR, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation, which invests over $20 million each year to strengthen education for students in Detroit and across Michigan. Now, to guide us into today's conversation with a very special guest, here's your host, Skillman Foundation President and CEO, Angelique Power.
Thank you, Lloyd. Just over 100 days in office at the time we're recording this, and on the heels of the most community-embedded transition in Detroit's history, Mayor Mary Sheffield is joining us on today's show. Mayor Sheffield is making good on promises, including prioritizing Detroit's youth and the opportunities they have to learn and thrive, which is the very mission that we have here at the Skillman Foundation. So welcome, Mayor Sheffield, to Our State of Education. Thank you for giving us some of your time during what is a very busy season for you.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here with you all.
So as a native Detroiter, you have been the youngest city council member in the history of our city. You are the youngest Black woman mayor in our nation's history. You are making waves and you are making a difference. I don't think many people understand the range of services that city government is responsible for, especially like a municipality that is as large as Detroit, with nearly 650,000 residents spread across 140 square miles. So Detroit is the 26th largest city in the U.S. area by population, and the land mass of Manhattan, Boston, and San Francisco combined could fit within our city limits. There is a lot that you oversee. Currently listed on the City of Detroit website, I counted more than 30 departments, ranging from public safety to housing to transportation, civil rights, and more. And on the topic of and more, you and your team are building a really bold strategy for how the city's going to support youth in Detroit in a way that hasn't been attempted before. Before we talk more concretely about those plans, why are you prioritizing Detroit's youth?
Yeah, well, I simply believe that it is our responsibility, it is our duty to do so. And I've always felt a huge responsibility being the youngest ever elected to city council at the age of 26, when so many people, when I ran for office at a young age, told me that it wasn't my time, that maybe I should wait, that I was too young. I always felt that it was my obligation to always pave the way and uplift the voices of our young people. And I truly believe that if we're serious about building a stronger and sustainable Detroit, that we have to invest in our young people early, intentionally, and very consistently. And so, every outcome that we care about in Detroit, whether it's public safety, economic mobility, growing our population, public health, it all ties back to how we support our young people. And so for us, it was really about not just talking about young people, but ensuring that they're really guiding the decisions and policy and how we are moving our city forward. So we're very proud of the new focus and capacity that this administration has on both youth and education.
So let's talk education. This has been a priority for Detroiters. Detroit has around 106,000 school-aged children, 181 public schools. 101 of those schools are part of the district. 80 are part of charters, and charters here are governed by more than 50 different boards that are appointed by several different authorizers. So all of this to say we have lots of students that are spread across the city, and honestly, a very fragmented education system that's hard for young people to navigate and for families, and it's hard to coordinate services across them. Now, we know a mayor doesn't run schools here in Detroit, but I know you have ideas for how the city could be a greater support to those students and to those families. What are some of the plans that you're cooking up?
Yeah, so I want to be very clear, throughout my campaign and even in my time serving on the city council, Detroiters were very clear that regardless if the mayor controls the school system or not, everyone feels as that the mayor has to have a better partnership and more involvement in the educational system of our students and our children in Detroit. And so I wanted to be very proactive and figure out better ways that we can approach how we are a greater partner with the school system. And the reality is that many of the barriers that our young people face happen outside of the classroom. So whether it's transportation, housing, instability, access to after school programming, mental health support, and safe environments. And I believe that that is where the city can be a greater partner. And so we are looking at how do we address absenteeism, how do we support after school programming, and how can we ensure that every child has access to after school programming within a 2-mile radius of their school. I also believe that some of the wraparound services and social issues that families face are another way that Detroit can be a greater partner. And we're working through our new Department of Human, Homeless, and Family Services to really provide the wraparound services that both families and students need as well. So we're very proud of the work that we're able to do. We know that there is a school board, there's a superintendent, there's charter, there's DPSCD, there's a lot of complexities within the educational system, but the city is really just leaning into what we can do as a partner to better address some of the needs that our students have.
From the jump, you were elected in November. I think I woke up the next day and you had a new website posted that had gone live at like 3 a.m. And I was part of this transition process as a private citizen, was honored to serve in that way. And you made a choice to do it differently. So many mayors, they bring in McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group, and they run a transition process that in the end produces a report that is, smart and enlightening, but then goes and sits on a shelf somewhere. And from the jump, you decided that you really wanted to prioritize Detroiters in this process. Why? Why was this so important to you to do it this way? And can you talk to us a little bit about what we heard from the forums to the survey, how that's driving what you're doing now that you're past the 100-day mark?
Yeah, so I've always governed this way through the voice of the people. I firmly believe that people closest to the challenges are also closest to the solutions. And it's easier to lead through individuals who are experiencing some of the policy and programs that we're trying to bring forth. And so, having that transition period where we listen directly to issues from youth, safer neighborhoods, more affordable housing, opportunities, equitable development, really gave me a deeper understanding of what is impacting Detroiters and how, as mayor, I can uplift those issues. And so, one of the reasons I really believe I was so successful within my first 100 days and being able to get things implemented right away is because we listened to what people wanted. And there were easy, tangible things that we can come in right away and improve on. And then there's more longer systemic things that we're working on addressing as well. But to me, it's always about empowering people who are living these experiences and know directly what would impact their quality of life.
The mayor plays such an important role in setting the direction of the city, and yet there's so many folks who are here who are equally responsible for the direction that we move in Detroit. And so partnerships become really important across different sectors. Partnerships work well if there's trust and relationship building. How are you thinking about all the partnerships that you need to engage in to get to the vision that you want for Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my role as mayor is to convene, to align, and to build progress and bridges across various sectors. What I do know at serving 12 years on city council and now coming in as mayor is we have a lot of priorities, a lot of challenges that we have to tackle, and city government cannot do this work alone. And even with some of the cuts from a federal level, some of the challenges that we see in Lansing with funding coming down, it really takes strategic partners to come together in a strategic way to address some of Detroit's outstanding priorities that we want to address. And so just really trying to be strategic in how we approach partners, making sure that we all have a common goal, common interest, and that we're all moving together in one voice, in one collective sound to advance what's best for Detroit. So I'm very grateful that in Detroit, we have so many dedicated partners who are all invested in Detroit's youth, invested in Detroit's future, who I believe will really ensure that Detroit continues to rise higher. So we are grateful for all of the partners and looking forward to those more strategic conversations around what has been impactful in Detroit, especially as it relates to some of the federal funding being cut, areas where we know we need additional assistance that the city cannot provide, and how those partners can step up and ensure that we are being strategic on how we funnel resources to those priorities in our city.
Mayor Sheffield, thank you for speaking with us on our State of Education today.
Thank you for having me.
That's where we'll leave it for this segment of our State of Education, powered by the Skillman Foundation, investing in brighter futures for Detroit's youth and students across Michigan. We'll continue with two important guests from within the mayor's administration when it comes to education and youth. That's next on 760 WJR. Welcome back to our State of Education, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation, which believes student, parent, and teacher voices must be at the table when decisions are being made about our schools. We're back with some special guests, and Angelique Power is going to tell us who they are.
Well, we're going to build on the conversation we started with Mayor Sheffield. Joining us today are Dr. Chanel Hampton, Senior Director, Youth and Education, Special Liaison to the Mayor. I'm going to have that memorized at some point. And we have Jerjuan Howard, Director of Youth Affairs for the City of Detroit. Welcome to our State of Education.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having me.
So you guys are both educators, you are entrepreneurs, you are wildly successful in your own realms, and you both answered the call from the mayor when she said, I need you to come lead this new department. Dr. Hampton, let's start with you. Why did you say yes?
That is a great question. So as you mentioned, I've been in education for about 20 years. And it goes back to, frankly, before my lifetime. Many people have heard me talk about Lola May and Joe Harris. They are my grandmother and my grandfather. They had a 4th and 6th grade education, respectively. My mother was on her way to Harvard, and she became pregnant with me. And while I may look young, I'm a bit older, and you still could be kicked out of school if you were pregnant when my mother had me. And so my mother ended up finishing in a GED program, but really instilled in me, along with my grandparents, the power of education. When I became a teacher, I had the quote, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave, Frederick Douglass. And our classroom motto was, we will prove them wrong. And so for me, I am the kids that I taught. Education has always been a powerful tool that was instilled in me, and I deeply believe that our young people rise to any occasion. And so I spent the first 10 years of my career in education. I was a teacher. I taught middle school English and social studies and launched a bunch of other programs. And then I ended up starting what became, before DI was a buzzword, an equity initiative to ensure that my Black students could see Black teachers. I was the only Black teacher that they had for a core subject area, and that was very problematic for me. And so ended up starting teacher recruitment and retention initiatives, then went on to manage a national recruitment team. In the last 10 years, I've led an organization that has been unapologetically committed to ensuring that Black people, Black students, Black neighborhoods across the country have what they deserve, desire, and need. And so when the mayor, now mayor, gave me that call last year, I told her I could give you 3 things: education, talent, and strategy. What's funny is she knew me from my work the last 10 years. She did not know that I was a teacher. And so that is the foundation of everything that I do. And the last thing I'd say is our young people deserve it. Why wouldn't I step up? Why wouldn't I? We have our first Black female mayor. She's making history. We have an opportunity to do generational work, and I believe it's part of my calling and my purpose, and it's an honor and a duty.
And you have stepped all the way up. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Jerjuan, you have a fascinating story also. You are in your 20s. Are you in your 20s?
I'm 28.
Okay. You've already accomplished so much. You founded the Umoja Debate League. You scaled it to schools in the district as well as across charters. And you bought a building to house a community space and a bookstore. I also want to shout out that you are a Skillman Visionary Awardee.
Yes, I am.
Recognized for your work in scaling out of school time programs. So I want to ask the same question that I asked to Dr. Hampton. What made you say yes?
So you mentioned I founded Umoja Debate League in 2021. Prior to that, I was academic interventionist for Detroit Public Schools Community District. And I worked for City Council. And I just began to understand the problems that we have in our city are holistic, and they do start with young people. And those who are close to the problem, the mayor said earlier, are closest to the solution. And with the Umoja Debate League, we wanted to teach young people how to be a solution to the problems they have within their own community. And when the mayor called for the opportunity to do that citywide, from a different perspective, a different institution? The answer was yes, very quickly. I believe that Detroit is changing rapidly before our eyes. In order for us to go where we want to go, young people must be included in that conversation. Their voice, they must be prioritized in every single decision that we make. And I believe that I had an opportunity to expand on that and build on it. And so I accepted the call when the mayor gave it to me.
Thank you. So we have just been speaking with Mayor Sheffield about the community listening process that she has gone through and how deeply embedded it is into the work that's happening. Dr. Hampton, talk to us about your team, what you're going to focus on, and how those community learnings are driving what you're doing.
Yeah. So I think I'll start with how our community learnings are driving what we're doing and the division that we're building out. So starting in the campaign trail, and Mayor Sheffield shared this, her entire city council career, right, was still grounded in people and listening to people. It was no different during the election and during the campaign trail. And so we had the opportunity to have community listening sessions on the campaign trail. As you mentioned, the day after she was elected, we immediately hit the ground running. Invitations went out to nearly 300 community members for 18 transition committees. We had the opportunity, and I know we sat on the education transition committee together, had the opportunity to listen to people, right? Community members, community leaders, cross-sector coming together to say, what do we want to see? What was powerful about that was we took what we heard, as you know, in the community listening sessions from the campaign trail, put that in front of our transition committees. We continued to synthesize that, and I have to give a shout out to every single member of every single transition committee. We put in work in a short amount of time, while everyone still had full-time jobs, families, responsibilities, and then we continued with forums. So in February and March, right, first few months, had, I think it was 7 community forums. We had a youth and education forum in early March, and we were able to listen to young people, to educators, to families. What made me so happy about our youth and education forum was that it was probably half young people.
It was.
And there was this portion of the forum where you do like a collective share out. Young people were sharing out. Like
and
they were
weren't
leading.
put up to it.
No,
no
it
one
was
said
completely
you
organic.
should go up there. It was just
Yeah.
team after team sharing out. It was
young
youth.
people were showing up and showing out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, if you give people the platform, if you give young people the platform, they are going to rise to the occasion and blow your expectations, right? And so that allowed us to, even early on, build out what the division of youth and education strategy is going to be. So, you know, we had an idea as we were listening to community, and every time we've been able to engage in various forums, also, frankly, looking at data, having conversations. My first week, I was at a national conference. My first meeting in City Hall was with Dr. Vitti. The next business day, we met with charter leaders, right? And so having all of these conversations, we were able to say, what do our young people need? Right? It became very apparent. We would focus in on absenteeism, out of school time, and transportation as key pillars. I'm really careful to say when we say absenteeism, we are not placing blame on young people and families. There are very real barriers and real reasons that kids do not show up to school. Right.
Yes.
And so with this division and what it looks like, I serve as the Senior Director of Youth and Education Liaison to the Mayor. I am convinced it is the longest title in the administration.
It is very long.
And so we're building out several offices. So Jerjuan leads our Office of Youth Affairs. How do we engage young people in the city? How do we engage them in government, right? We also are building out a 0 through 26 continuum overall. So we want to make sure our North Star is every young person in our city, 0 through 26, will have access inside school and outside of school and well into young adulthood. We were with some young people at Southeastern, I want to say, a few weeks ago, and I asked them, you know, do you think we should stop at 18 when you legally become an adult? And I asked them, do you have an older brother or sister? Do they have it all together at 18? They're like, no. So a young person's like, can you go to 30? And I was like, look, we got to stop somewhere, okay? We're going to stop at 26.
The 50s?
Correct, because I told them, like, we're all faking it till we make it, okay?
That's right.
And so within that 0 through 26 continuum, we'll be building out an Office of Early Learning, Office of K-12 School Partnerships, out of school time and workforce. So think of like Grow Detroit's Young Talent. We're hearing loud and clear from young people and from schools. We need more high school internships, externships, so that early career exposure. Then our Office of College and Career Access and Success. And we also have our Office of Youth Affairs.
Yes.
And so we're building that out. We are building a department that has literally never existed in our city's government. And by the time that I'm done building out the division and we are fully staffed, we will have the most robust city department for youth in the country.
We are going to come back to that. I really want to talk about how what you're doing isn't just for youth, but with youth. And so we'll take a break, and Jerjuan, I'm going to come back to start the next segment with you.
Well, that brings us to an end of this segment, but there's much more ahead here on Our State of Education, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation on 760 WJR. Welcome back to Our State of Education, proudly supported by the Skillman Foundation, partnering with people to transform education and nurture the brilliance and power of Detroit youth. We're back now with Skillman President and CEO Angelique Power to give us who our guests are again.
Thank you, Lloyd. We are here with Dr. Chanel Hampton, Senior Director, Youth and Education, Special Liaison to the Mayor, and Jerjuan Howard, Director of Youth Affairs for the City of Detroit. Jerjuan, we wanted to come back to you after the last segment and find out a little bit more about what does that mean to be the Director of Youth Affairs for the City of Detroit, and what is your vision for that department?
Thank you. So as Director of Youth Affairs, my vision is to integrate a youth priority into the city's current functions and for its plan in the future. That includes including youth voice inside of decisions, inside of their perspective before we actually implement programs and initiatives and campaigns. That also includes that this ideology of putting youth first just shouldn't exist only within the Office of Youth Affairs. It should exist within every fabric of the city because this is our greatest asset. One example of that will be the Youth Priority Initiative, where every city department will pretty much be prioritizing youth somehow, some way within their services and their operations. Not only will they prioritize them, they also must include a statement around how their services impact Detroit youth. So just kind of changing the way that the city functions and prioritizes our young people for now and the future will kind of sum up what this title and what this role means in general. And again, the vision for a long term is to make sure that, although I'm Director of Youth Affairs, every single city department and leader is thinking about youth somehow, some way through their services and operations.
Wow. I mean, that's a really big deal that it isn't, siloed into a department, but the entire city is rallying around young people.
Absolutely.
With all of those 30 plus departments that I mentioned earlier in the show. Has that happened anywhere in the country before?
From my understanding, it is not. I have not seen a youth priority initiative that is as intentional and as strategic as the one that we have here in the city of Detroit. I have not seen it.
Ooh, that's really exciting. So one of the mantras that we have at the Skillman Foundation is that we like to pass the mic. And so we seek out people who are most in the know to come and be in conversation. That's really the point of this entire show and podcast, Our State of Education. And I have been receiving emails since we started this show with really interesting input of thoughts that people have. And on our social media, people have been commenting. So we are introducing a new segment which brings listener voice into the studio. Lloyd, can you help us with this segment?
Yes, I sure will. And let's go to our first question. It comes from Julia Ritchie, a youth program provider. Now, she says, education is a shared civic responsibility, although the school system operates independently of the mayor's office. What are 3 elements of Detroit's learning environment you believe the city should help improve, and why?
Well, first and foremost, Julia, thank you for everything you do for young people, if you're listening. And I actually love this question because it relates to our community listening sessions and the campaign trail and our transition committees. There are 3 clear priorities that came from community in terms of what they believe the city could focus in on. So student absenteeism, out of school time, and transportation. Julia, you're correct. We do not control the schools. We should not control the schools. We are not trying to control the schools. We have an opportunity to be a partner, a connector, a convener. So when we know that we have over 100,000 K-12 students across the city, when we have about 56 charter school districts, we have DPSCD, we have about 50 authorizers across the charter network, right? About 50 plus charter districts with about a dozen authorizers. While people may think that these worlds are so different, they're not, right? There are very real reasons, charter, DPSCD, East Side, West Side, District 1, 2, 6, 7, what have you, where kids have real barriers, right? Families have real barriers. So when we look at absenteeism, we are sitting down at the table, and I am meeting, frankly, on a weekly basis with DPSCD, with our charter school leaders to say, okay, what are key levers and how can we support you, right? An example of that is the Ride to Rise program. So April 1st, Mayor Sheffield announced, I believe at State of the City, she announced the night before at Mumford High School that all students in Detroit would be able to show your ID and ride for free. We know that predominantly or disproportionately will impact our high school students, right? But they're not just able to ride for free to school. They're able to ride extracurriculars, get to and from jobs. And then we know that we're putting about $1 million back into Detroit schools across the board so they can reinvest in out of school time. And so that is an example of how we connected those three priorities. We have a lot of work to do. And so working on forming a coalition where we're really clearly focusing on those three priorities. And thank you for that question, Julia. I'm really excited we're getting to work already.
And our final question today comes from Ziana Henry, a Detroit high school student and member of the Skillman's Youth Council. Ziana wants city leaders to consider ways they can create a healthier environment and a cleaner city by creating jobs for young people to help with this, like neighborhood cleanup workers. Is the city considering anything like this?
Well, first, I want to say thank you, Ziana, for your question. And absolutely we are. We currently have Motor City Makeover going on right now, which is a citywide initiative around neighborhood beautification. We also have our GDYT applications, which are open up right now. GDYT stands for Grow Detroit's Young Talent. People from the age of 14 to 24 can apply to work for a city department or another institution within the city. We are currently working on some efforts as well. This isn't paid right now, but volunteers young people to be able to volunteer, get their hours for graduation around neighborhood cleanup, beautification, things of that sort. But the direct answer will be gdyt.org to be paired up with the Department of Neighborhoods, where they can also learn how to be civically engaged as well as better in their environment and be paid to do so during the summertime.
Thank you for those questions.
Well, that is really exciting. We'll talk a little bit later about how you can send your own listener question in. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about something that has happened recently in our city. We had a group of young teens, and this is actually happening in lots of different places, that came downtown, that wanted to enjoy our downtown and spend some time, and had named it themselves Teen Takeover, which is a story in and of itself, how the name came to be. And what we saw in Detroit, speaking of youth involvement and also doing things that aren't happening elsewhere in the nation, was different. Rather than talking about we are going to have a strong curfew and pulling the police out, there was a different approach here. Do you want to tell us what that is, Dr. Hampton?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I think we're all sitting here, we know that we need to listen to young people, right? Our young people deserve to be seen. They deserve to be heard. And so you're right. Across the country, we did see this teen takeover phenomenon, which I think we forget we were all kids at one point. And whether you're in Chicago, Detroit, LA, DC, you were also going downtown in different areas. You weren't necessarily staying at home. But unfortunately, we did see some places in the country where, young people, the behavior wasn't as safe, right? I think there are very real root causes of that. And I encourage respective communities to really sit down and dig into healing and restorative practice with their young people. What I saw here was very different. Our young people literally wanted to be kids. They wanted to be outside. They wanted to just enjoy themselves in their city. And so I was really curious. There were a group of community members in my past life that we've just done work in community for years together. We've been in the trenches. And so I got a call really late, and we ended up connecting with a group of young people who disclosed to several of us that they were the organizers. My initial inclination was like, I want to talk to you. I want to listen. Like, what made you want to start this? Or, what do you need from your city? How do we support you? We talked for a few days, and then I think they realized I worked for the mayor. And then they thought they were going to get arrested. Did not say anything to that effect, but they thought they were in trouble. Yeah. So it took a couple more days. I talked one-on-one to several parents. I talked to several of them one-on-one. I had a couple group calls and really assured them that I genuinely just wanted to listen to them. So I ended up letting the mayor know. We sat down and had a roundtable conversation. And really what came from that was we want to have fun, safe, engaging spaces in our city. And we don't really have a lot in many of our neighborhoods. Priority youth, right? Mayor Sheffield has a priority of youth. She also has a priority around neighborhoods. And so what I heard was literally the Office of Out of School Time and Workforce that we're building out. We asked them if they would be willing to work with us. We wanted to support them. And ultimately what came to be from that was what they ended up renaming as the Teen Kickbacks. So we just had our first one this past Saturday at Hart Plaza. Kids had fun, safe, an engaging time. It was freezing, but our kiddos who came had a fantastic time. Parents who were there were grateful, and we wanted our young people to see we were behind them. So what I would say and what was so powerful was a couple young people ended up saying, thank you to the mayor. Thank you to a number of colleagues who have been supporting them. You all weren't against us, you were for us. And so that's what our Teen Kickback is about, letting kids be kids, lifting them up, letting them drive the strategy. And our job and duty is to provide resources to create those fun, safe, engaging spaces for them here in Detroit.
Thank you, Dr. Hampton.
A lot of ground has been covered, but there's still more to unpack in our final segment right here after this break. You're listening to Our State of Education, brought to you by the Skillman Foundation on 760 WJR. Welcome back to Our State of Education, sponsored by the Skillman Foundation, where we follow the will of Detroit youth to dream big and design new possibilities together. Angelique, let's turn it back over to you to introduce our final guest.
Joining us now is Imani Foster. Since the age of 15, Imani has been advocating for young people and their education. She's now in her 20s and leads communication for 482 Forward, a nonprofit that mobilizes Detroiters of all ages around the changes that they want to see in the schools. Full disclosure, the Skillman Foundation provides grant funding to support 482 Forward in that work. More full disclosure, I am a friend and a big fan of Imani's. I'm her Flavor Flav, although her husband may say he is. So I am very excited for this segment. Imani, you were a member of the transition team, the same one that I was on, the Education and Youth Affairs. And I was very honored to work alongside of you on that committee. We were also on one of the governor's committees together around population growth that also focused on education. So what drew you originally to be this voice for education and this megaphone for youth and families?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the beautiful introduction. So originally, what drove me into this work was being a student who felt like she wasn't getting what she deserved. I went to Renaissance, which is the #1 high school in Detroit. And unfortunately, even at, the best school in Detroit, we were still plagued with a lot of the issues that all students face in Detroit, because it's not just a neighborhood issue. It's an issue across our city that we don't have enough funding for our public schools. And so at Renaissance, I went my freshman year, I didn't have an English teacher the whole year. And my sophomore year, I didn't have a French teacher for half of the year. We had overcrowded classrooms, very old materials and books, and just a lot of things that I experienced that already were starting to formulate in my mind, like, everyone doesn't deal with this. And it doesn't seem fair. And then by the end of my sophomore year, we were under emergency management, and the schools were going bankrupt. And the teachers were told, we can't afford to pay you, but we want you to still work until the end of the summer. And so, as they should, the teachers sicked out, which is like a protest method that they can legally use. And our emergency manager was fighting back, like, oh, if you stick out, we'll fire you. And so I had a teacher, his name is Mr. Sweet. I'll never forget Mr. Sweet, who gave us an assignment to write to our legislators and share with them our experience and why we needed them to fully fund public schools. And at 15, I took that so seriously. I was the only one, because he was like, you could just do your assignment or you could write this letter. And I was the only one that was I'm going to write this letter because there's a lot of things I want to say, actually. And when I shared the letter with my mom, I was like, hey, Mom, can you just read this, make sure it looks good, whatever. She actually posted it on Facebook. And when she posted it on Facebook, she's like, I'm so proud of my daughter, already an advocate. But what happened was actually this letter was picked up by different mediums, by the Huffington Post, by the Detroit Free Press, and another medium. And I just remember being 15 and thinking oh, people actually care what I have to say. And not only do they care, they want to do something more because I'm the person that's experiencing it. And so from that age, I just realized how important it was for our young people to be involved in the conversations about not only what's wrong, but how we need to fix it and to make it right. And so I was a youth organizer, and now I'm supporting a lot of the organizing that 42 Forward does with youth and with parents and with teachers who are also at the forefront of what's wrong and should be at the forefront of creating what's right.
That's actually the first way that I got to know you, was reading this op-ed that we were circulating inside of Skillman, you know, years and years after you first wrote it. Yeah. And I think a big part of what, you know, compelled people was not only how well written it is, and you went on to get a journalism degree from Northwestern University, but just how real it is. And in many ways, it was the first step in bringing youth voice into shaping an understanding of the issues and an understanding of the solutions. I want to say proactively to the listeners that are going to write about your claim that Renaissance is the #1 high school.
They're going to come for me. They're going to come for me.
I understand already, just to head that off at the pass. So I want to know, what has it meant as a native Detroiter, as a young education advocate, now as a community organizer, to hear what we heard this morning, what we, you know, were talking about in our transition committee, the state of the city, the press conference where you actually stepped up and shared more of your thoughts in your writing. What does it feel like to be in the city and to see this impact on youth and education now?
Yeah, it's so exciting. I think it's like the dream that 15-year-old Imani had, like when I first decided to share my story about like a leadership that actually recognizes that youth are the center and not just like should be in the front at the press conferences. Like we line up the kids in the front and they look all cute and then we're like, okay, go back to class. But instead is like intentionally having conversations with young people, intentionally seeing a negative narrative surrounding youth and saying, no, we're going to correct that. We're going to change. We're going to talk to them and figure out what it is that's at the root. I think it's so exciting. It's so important. And I just think, you know, I wrote this in another op-ed that I put out last year, but like the mayor is the only person that is like solely responsible for all of the youth in Detroit, right? Half our youth go to charter schools, half our youth go to public schools. There's not just one superintendent that's responsible for Detroit's youth, right? The governor is responsible for like all of Michigan's youth. Who is the person that we can look to say, I'm counting on you to put me at the center? It's the mayor of Detroit, because there's no other convening body that is responsible. And so I think it's just so important that Mayor Sheffield has like stepped up to the plate and seen this as her role intentionally, and being like, hey, I don't govern the schools, but what I do govern is all the things that youth are experiencing outside of school that impact how they show up to school. I don't govern the schools, but also as the mayor, I have the respect of leadership of different school districts so that I can be the convening body. I think this is exactly what 42 Forward has like worked on and fought for so long in this, like, you know, Detroit is coming back. It's like, how does Detroit come back without the schools? How does Detroit come back without the youth? How does Detroit come back without the neighborhoods? And so it's just so exciting to see a mayor that is putting that at the center and prioritizing the people of Detroit, and not just who we want to come here, but like the people that are here right now.
One of the really interesting things about those 18 transition committees that we didn't actually mention is that our committee, the Education and Youth Affairs Committee, worked really hard to try to put high schoolers actually on every single transition committee. Yes. And we learned a lot from that process. There were things that were successful, things that were not. But one of the things that I think, you know, I don't know if I could attribute it to the transition committees or those fantastic forums that happen or the online surveys, but we've already seen this announcement around transportation and young people riding for free. We know that there's expanded access now to after school, that there's more summer programming that's coming. You talk to Detroit residents all the time.
Absolutely.
How do you think they feel about these first moves that are happening?
I've talked to individuals who are very much, I don't want to keep using the word excited. I'm looking for another word, but I think that they feel prioritized. And I think that that's really important. A lot of times, and I'm so happy that Chanel said that, like, we're not blaming chronic absence on the parents and on the students because we recognize that there are things that impact it. And I think when we get to those root causes, what it shows people is like, you see me, really, like you see me, and you don't want to just create something that fixes what it looks like, but not actually the root of the issue, right? Because we could say we're going to penalize every parent who doesn't send their kid to school. And like, maybe that would like get kids to school, but it wouldn't fix the root cause of the problem, which is like, how many parents don't have cars? How many parents have multiple kids that they're trying to get to school every day? How many parents need mental health support? Like, so many things that are a root cause issue. How many parents don't have food in the house? How many families are experiencing homelessness? Like, when we see Detroiters for not just the problems that they bring, right, but for the things that they're experiencing, I think it really makes them even more excited to be politically engaged, if I'm being honest. Like, a lot of people voted for Mayor Sheffield because they felt like she saw them. She saw their issues, and she didn't just want to be mayor to make Detroit look pretty, right, like a cardboard cutout, but I want the people of Detroit to also be better. And so I think that it does reflect a lot of the things that I've heard, definitely transportation, especially out of school time. We talked to so many parents. We just did a one-on-one campaign 2 years ago at 482 Forward. And parents talked about how even there are some resources for kids, but they're not in the neighborhoods. And if they are in the neighborhoods, they're hard to access. People don't know what exists, where it is, how to get into it. And also for programs that are away or outside of schools, if I don't have transportation to get my kid to school, how am I going to get them to this program?
Right.
And so I think it's so important that the mayor is kind of thinking through, like, how do we make all of these programs accessible? And also, how do we give the district money back? Such an innovative idea.
Yeah.
Money back so that they can have out of school time programs in their school.
Which is what's happening with transportation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Imani. That went
you.
by too fast.
I know.
I'm going to turn back to you to tell us about how more listeners can get involved.
That's right. Whether you're a parent or a policymaker, a student or a teacher, business leader or community member, your voice matters. So send us your thoughts and questions. We'll bring some of these to the show. Go to skillman.org/state of ed. That's skillman.org/state of ed. We'll see you next month with more voices, more insight, more hope for the future of Michigan students on our State of Education, only on 760 WJR.